Kia ora, ko taranaki ko karioe ngā maunga, o Te Aotearoa, ko Ngāti Mahanga, ko ngā mahanga tairi o ku iwi, e tipu ake au i runga i te whenua o Waitara, ko tētahi mokopuna o te maunga tītohia mihi atu. Kia koutou katoa i mā takitaki maina. So first and foremost, I'm Māori, from Waitara, from Taranaki, with connections here to Waikato Tainui. And I'm a mum of 6 tamariki. I'm a grandmother of 5 mokopuna, and I'm takataapui. So really when I think about who I am, I'm all of those things simultaneously. As a wahine Māori, you know, we have many roles, as tuakana, as teina, as whanaunga, as tuahine. And so, yeah, when I think about who I am, I think about all of those things kind of brought together in this person sitting in front of you. And for me, you know, all parts of who I am are equally important. And so, you know, I've begun to think more about what does that mean for the takataapui? What does it mean for our people coming out? What does it mean, not just for my generation, but for future generations, in terms of how we may identify ourselves and how we see ourselves in the context of our whānau hapū. When I think about being takataapui, for me that's always in the context of whānau and of my role within my whānau and within our hapū and how that connects to what I do and how I live my life. And so for many years when I first came out, I came out as a lesbian because I didn't have any other terminology to think about what it meant to be a Māori lesbian. And so in that time, in the 80s, I was fortunate to meet a group in Auckland, in Tāmaki Makaurau, called Wahine mō ngā wahine, o te moana nui a kiwa. And I realised that actually when we think about it in Māori terms, when we think about sexuality and our sexual expression and how we articulate ourselves and name ourselves, it seemed to fit more for me in Te Reo Māori. So when I thought about wahine mō ngā wahine, that fitted. And then in the 90s, when people began to use the word takataapui, again, that fitted more for me than the word lesbian. And I'm not saying that that doesn't have a place for other takataapui wahine Māori, but for me, it's not how I describe myself. I think the term takataapui comes from here, it's from Papatūānuku, it's of us, it's of our people. It culturally locates me and defines me in relation to my whānau and to other Māori, you know, that I live and work with. The word lesbian for me comes from somewhere else. It's grounded in a different cultural framework. It has different expectations and ways of being. And so my preference is to now use the term either takataapui or wahine mō ngā wahine. I first came out in the mid-1980s and I was kind of, for me initially it wasn't an issue. I didn't feel like I needed to be out, so to speak. But it was homosexual law reform time, and at that time there was a lot of work being done around homosexual law reform, and I felt that I had an obligation and responsibility to other takataapui and to our whānau in terms of understanding homosexual law reform, to be more visible. And so pretty much from the 80s on I've been visibly takataapui, but that doesn't mean that I've had to necessarily shout it to everyone. In fact, when I first talked about being takataapui with my own whānau, there was mixed reaction. It was, interestingly, my father, his reaction was very much around as long as you're happy. And for my mother, one of her initial reactions, which I had kind of predicted, was, but you always love children, so how are you going to have children? So it was really dealing with kind of demystifying some of those things around whānau and around an ability for anyone can have children. But we've got to kind of decolonise our understanding about what that means to have children. So I have 6 children, of which 2 I birthed. The other 4 fundamentally are whānau, but they're my children, and I have 5 grandchildren. So really, as takataapui, there's no limitations or restrictions on what we can do, whether we have children or we don't have children. The choice is there and available. We just need to know how to do it. We need to think in a really kind of decolonial way about how we might go around constructing whānau that doesn't look like what's a presumed kind of heterosexual normative way of being a whānau. One of the things that I'm always aware of are the experiences that other takataapui have in terms of the negative reactions to them, the negative responses to being takataapui, both in terms of on a whānau level, community level, and on a national level. So I've always been really concerned about the treatment of takataapui in Aotearoa and within our own whānau as well. When I first moved to Tāmaki, I made really conscious decisions around who I would have as my GP and what kind of healthcare services I would go to. So I always picked doctors that had some kind of alternative health care. So my first GP I went to when I decided to have children was also an acupuncturist. And so, that was quite a big deal in the 80s to have that kind of alternative medicine as a part of your practice. And I did that because I couldn't find initially Māori doctors, and they were few and far between. So I was very, conscious about who I went to. And so in terms of my own personal care, I've always been very careful and thought carefully about who I will have time with. I spend a lot of time with Māori health practitioners. I do a lot of romi and miri. I do more rongoa now in terms of my own care. One of the things as I got older, I've realised that we actually have the ability in our own hands to care for ourselves. And so, we've planted a rongoa garden, and we've done a lot of that fundamental care for our whānau ourselves. But in terms of thinking about going to general practitioners and doctors, I've had to think really carefully, both as a Māori woman and as takataapui, around who I'm willing to have supporting my health and, being near my body and being near my wairua and all those things. I think that all health professionals in this country need to be trained in terms of gender identity, in terms of sexuality, in terms of what is whānau. On a real fundamental level for Māori, it's like whānau is not family. Whānau does not equate to a, nuclear model, colonial model of a family. We are a whānau. So there are both the intersection between racism and gender and homophobia, understanding that intersection and how that operates, being able to identify a need to be very clear with people that you're providing health care with in terms of knowledge and health promotions knowledge around issues, and not assuming a heterosexuality or not having a kind of heteronormative assumption about who people are in terms of their gender identity and their sexual identity, in terms of having a greater political awareness of what that means in people's lives. There's a whole range of communication issues, there's a whole range of political issues, there's a whole range of cultural issues. And they all need to be integrated into a really clear way of training health practitioners. There need to be more active recruitment of Māori and more active recruitment of takataapui into the health services. There needs to be a move away from this kind of mainstream idea that people get treated individually and that they're not treated as a part of a whānau, that people are not seen as a part of a whānau, and that whānau looks like many things. That whānau does not fit this tidy nuclear model of 2 heterosexual parents and 2.5 children. There are multiple ways. In fact, very, very few whānau that even fit that model. And yet it is the assumed model that people consider. The needs of takataapui in terms of the multiple needs of takataapui in terms of transgender, intersex, the ways in which we engage the multiple ways of identifying as gender. There are a whole lot of complexities, I think, that are not dealt with in terms of when people think about takataapui. Takataapui is a group for me that is about a collective coming together that affirms multiple gender identities and sexualities and fluidity. But we know that inside that we have particular needs of particular groups. And so I think that, there is a lot of work still to be done in the area. One of the things for me around where we are at the moment as takataapui is that I've realised we're not that visible, actually, and that we do need to be more visible. And I say that because I think there are a lot of young people that are still looking for people who look like them or who feel like them, who they think are like them. And we have a high suicide rate within the takataapui community. We have a high youth suicide rate. So what that means is that there's a whole young population, a whole new population, new generation coming through as takataapui who are not seeing models and not getting to see that there are other people who are visible, who are like them. I think in this day and age, the fact that people still think they're alone and they're the only one is not acceptable. And I think the fact that many young people, young Māori people, are committing suicide because they don't have a support mechanism around them as young people and as takataapui in this time is not acceptable. I think that my generation and the 30s and 40s, people who are in their 30s and 40s and my generation need to be more visible so the next generation of young people see that we're here and that we are takataapui and that they're not alone and that they're not the only one and that there are people who can listen and support and be there for them. What I see in the media in this country is really primarily a negative comment around takataapui, except in the context where they think it's acceptable. So I think there's a particular way of being that they consider to be acceptable, which is a kind of flamboyant drag queen type view that the media in this country believe is the only acceptable way of being, the only acceptable way of representing what it means to be takataapui. And I think in any other case, generally, it's been a negative representation. I think we're constantly battling this idea of colonial, heterosexuality in our media. It's ongoing, it's every day, it's every time you turn, that's all you see as a dominant way of being in this country. So we need to be able to have more expression of the diversity of how people express themselves and their tikanga, and their sexuality, and their gender, and their just general way of being. I think we've really bought into this colonial gendered idea of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And actually in Te Ao Māori, that was not the case.